So there's 3 myths in this burnout chapter. There's 3 myths. Myth number 1 is that burnout is obvious. We think we're able to tell when our brains are fried, but staying afloat while fielding a firestorm of notifications and hurtling from one meeting to the next can be so emotionally consuming that we don't even realize the extent of our fatigue. That's why burnout often seems sudden. It's the crash after you've been unknowingly running on empty for too long. This part was really interesting to me. Hi, Ellie. How are you feeling today? Good morning, Mom Boss Lady. How are you feeling today? A job interview? That's exciting. Good luck, friend. Good luck. I'm crossing my fingers for you. My brain's always fried. I didn't like the scrambled brain. Okay, so this part's really cool. One of the most, or not cool, but informative. One of the most dangerous aspects of burning out is that it impacts self-awareness. When you're in it, you're fueled by adrenaline, and the momentum feels so exhilarating that you end up adding more and more to your plate. It wasn't until Mollie, one of the authors, got sick and then injured that she looked back and realized, oh God, why did I make myself do all of that? But she didn't feel on the verge of burnout at the time. She felt like Superwoman. You guys have any thoughts on that? Like, I know that we're talking about burnout, and I know that several of us have said that we're experiencing it, but, you know, how many of you guys, I don't want to say foresaw your burnout coming, but, like, you know, noticed it before you already were? Extremely sleepy? I hear you, Mom Boss Lady. I'll let you know how it went tomorrow. Fantastic, Ellie. I am very hopeful for you. Good luck, friend. You got this. Just took my morning vitamins. High five. Gotta take those vitamins. I need to get more soon. Okay, so here are some signs. About burnout that could be subtle cues that might mean that you need to like reassess what you're doing. So basic activities like going to the grocery store feel overstimulating. You feel so overwhelmed that you've started to cut out activities you know are good for you. You have the Sunday scaries on a Saturday. You're saying yes even though you're already at capacity. You feel like you're running purely on fumes. You find everyone and everything irritating. Getting sick and being forced to shut down for a bit sounds kind of nice. You're suffering from Groundhog Day syndrome. Every day starts to feel the same. You're all too familiar with revenge bedtime procrastination. Revenge bedtime procrastination. When you stubbornly stay up late because you didn't get any time to yourself during the day. Yeah, let's get all those that's me rolling in. Let's get all those that's me rolling in. Cause I'm not gonna say that I'm glad I have a sleep too much disorder, but one of the only reasons I'm grateful that I have problems with sleeping too much rather than sleeping too little is that I get enough sleep. So I don't have problems with the revenge bedtime procrastination. However, when I read this, I was like, oh my goodness, how many people do I know have experience with that? I'm not judging you guys. The reason I did the zoom in on the eyes wasn't a judgment. It was more like a, let me get into your soul a little bit. Can you accept that you realize this might be something that you're doing? Yes, all the time. I find everything and everyone extremely irritating. Okay, so you have troubles, mom boss lady. It's you, Mr. Krabs. That was me last night, staying up just to stay up. Right. It's no bueno how well this book be describing my life. I feel like they be in my head. This is why I've been so hype about this book. I have a sleep too little problem. I had a Kit Kat for breakfast. I'm telling you, gotta get that smoothie. My first sign of burnout coming is I start taking iron, as I used to be anemic and it made me exhausted. The doctor gave me 2 iron infusions and I felt much better. So now my body can't tell the difference between iron deficiency and burnout. And when burnout is coming, my body is like, oh, it's anemia. Iron will fix that, but iron won't fix that. Ooh. So, with that being said, Miss Mango, does that mean that you seek to start supplementing that iron and then also take into consideration that you have to slow down in other ways as well? You sleep when your body finally gives out? Right. And I'm not trying to judge you guys. I'm not at all trying to judge you guys. But so here's the paragraph after that list I just read you. We're quick to ignore these signs because we can usually muscle through them, but they're important alarm bells. As Naveed Ahmad, the founder of Flourish, a company that helps people combat burnout, told us, sometimes life taps you on the shoulder with a feather, sometimes it hits you with a brick, and sometimes it runs you over with a bus. Learn to listen when it's just a feather. I felt like that was a creative invitation to trying to raise that awareness just a little bit more. What is it going to take to practice being a little bit more aware when the more softer notifications of, I should reassess what I'm doing right now. Nope, I'll be a week into iron and I'll be like, well, this isn't helping at all. Oh, okay. I continue the iron though, because why not? It might help a little. Yeah, definitely. But okay, understandable. Makes sense. So, myth number 2 of burnout. Myth number 2. Addressing burnout isn't urgent if you're not falling apart. This is a myth. Addressing burnout isn't urgent if you're not falling apart. I've had 2 major episodes of work-related burnout. Both resulted in trips to the ER, one for a seizure caused by too little sleep and caffeine overdose in an attempt to compensate for lack of sleep. Let's just say I've learned my lesson and know my limits. Goodness gracious, Queen of Fur, thank you so much for sharing that experience. I really appreciate it. It's communities like these that we get the chance to hear from other people and what they've experienced and gain a little bit of insight on what could be coming for us if we let ourselves go too much too, Queen of Fur, that's a very I don't know if this is inappropriate to think of it this way, but impactful experience to share, in the sense that you're just, it's real. It's possible. Rob, good morning, friend. How you feeling? And welcome back, Mugus. My body is burnt out. I power through, but milk, I keep drinking too much. So the milk is your gas? We tend to believe that as long as we're able to put one foot in front of the other, there's no need for concern or rest. So we keep pushing and pushing. We schedule a client meeting during our lunch break. We drag ourselves out of bed at the crack of dawn to join an international call. We feel responsible for extinguishing every fire at work and at home. On their own, these personal violations might seem small. But as Dr. Richard Gunderman writes, Burnout is the sum total of hundreds and thousands of tiny betrayals on purpose, each one so minute that it hardly attracts notice. It was a major wake-up call. The physical effects from burnout are no joke. Thank you again, Queen of Fur. Queen of Fur, you don't happen to enjoy writing in any way, do you? So with this blog that I have for my website and my community, I'm hoping for it to become kind of more of a community blog with more experiences than just mine. And I would be curious to know if you've written about that experience, how long it's been since that experience as well, because maybe you're still coming out of it. And if you would be interested or willing to write about that. But no pressure, and also 2 years from now you can hit me up and tell me you want to. I understand about the seizures. I had a grand mal, the motive, 27 2 days ago. Mine is from a ton of stress and lack of sleep. Hubby said it was bad. Oh, mom, boss lady. Are you taking care of yourself now? Okay, I want to know about this work burnout because I feel like I'm hitting that wall soon. Okay, E-Rob. Okay, let me go back through then. So a couple things. First, the first myth is that burnout is obvious. We think we'll be able to tell when our brains are fried, but when we're in burnout, we're fueled by adrenaline, so the momentum feels exhilarating so that you add more to your plate. And it's not until you get sick or injured that you realize how much you were doing. And then let me read you some subtle cues that could indicate you may need to reassess. So basic activities like going to the grocery store feel overstimulating. You feel so overwhelmed that you start to cut out activities you know are good for you, like alone time or exercise. You have the Sunday scaries on a Saturday. You're saying yes even though you're at capacity. You feel like you're purely running on fumes. You find everyone and everything irritating. Getting sick and being forced to shut down for a bit kind of sounds nice. You're suffering from Groundhog Day syndrome. Every day starts to feel the same. You're all too familiar with revenge bedtime procrastination, when you stubbornly stay up late because you didn't get any time to yourself during the day. So those were some of the signs that I read. I don't know if you were in here for that, E-Rob, but that's what we read before that. And now we're on to myth number 2, that addressing burnout isn't urgent if you're falling apart. It is urgent to address it. So here's another graphic. You see how it said, hopefully it focuses, but it says thriving. So we're thriving over here. When we need a break is here. When we actually take the break, it's here. Does that make sense to you guys? He says, oh, dang. Oh, man. Oh, dear. Okay, let me read chat, guys. You would be willing to do that? I appreciate that, Queen of Fur. And also, Caitlin, I realized that I didn't respond to you about you saying you've been gone for 2 months on vacation, but I'm really glad to hear that, and I hope that things are okay at home. So you said, it seems that my grandfather was experiencing burnout right before he put my grandma into the memory unit. I did not know it, though, until you read that part where it said something about staying up because you haven't been alone. And the reason I stopped and paused on that one is because that is such almost something that seems innocent. You deserve that time for yourself. So of course you're going to stay up later to get that time for yourself because you deserve it. But in reality, it would be more healthy to reassess everything that you're already doing and make time for that in a time that's not during your sleep time, All I'm going to say is music helps a lot to motivate you, and food and drink to keep powering forward. That's my key to make things work for me. Walking, bike riding also helps. Yeah, bike riding does help, definitely, and walking. almost too late on taking action. Right. And that's the thing. We tend to do self-care when we hit our limits. We don't think about doing self-care when things are good, because things are good. But without that, that's how we fall into that burnout, which, like it said, we run on adrenaline because we're doing as much as we're doing. You feel like you can do it all. Sometimes I just want a day to myself, but I always feel bad to call off. So E-Rob, I will say that there are a lot of, pieces that influence this, and this book does acknowledge things like, the financial need to keep doing it, and things like basically you feel like you have no other choice and you have to. And sometimes I understand if you have no other choice. However, if you are a person who does have the ability to take a day off or call out for a day or schedule time off or something like that, if you have that ability, whether either you have paid time off or you have enough money to take a day off unpaid, take that day off unpaid and don't feel bad. 0% feeling bad. Because if you think about it, so my dad, let me check to see if he's here and listening. So my dad got diagnosed with cancer in January of 2022. My dad's been working the same job since before I was born in a factory. And it's a factory where he gets a lot of overtime. So he has worked countless 80-hour weeks. Once my brother and I both went off to college and they empty nested, he picked up a part-time job and works on the weekends now as well. When he got diagnosed with cancer, that was right around when I was learning about just how much overworking yourself can influence our health. Kind of like Queen of Fur, you were saying that you got to the point where you had to go to the ER because of overwork. I don't know if my dad is at the same conclusion as me in the thought that, he got cancer because of his overwork, because I'm not necessarily suggesting that. But what I am suggesting is that when we live in this state of overwork, our immune systems are nothing. Our health is nothing. And so I personally think that happening for him was more or less an indication of him needing to slow down. It's just that I don't really understand my father, because he went through the radiation. He is now in remission. He's been in remission for over 6 months, and that guy just keeps working both jobs. He worked through radiation, and he's in remission. So clearly, obviously, overwork doesn't have anything to do with that. However, I think that he did learn a lot about how to take care of himself more. I think sometimes when we get down, whether we're injured or we're sick or we have some kind of something happened, it gives us a moment to reflect. It just depends on if you take that time to do the reflection. If you're too focused on getting back to it, you may not notice that you need to maybe implement some of these slowdowns into your life beyond after you get healthy again, so that you don't get to the point of being that unhealthy. Okay, let me read chat, guys. Let me read chat. Maybe that's what's up with me. I'm on burnout, and then I stay up late as I don't get any time during the day. Right, Venom. That definitely can contribute. I have about 300 hours of PTO, only used 40 of it. Okay, E-Rob, you have 300 hours of PTO. Can we, set time for a call for us to look at your schedule and start scheduling days off for you? Can I support you in that? Not to be weird, but can I hold your hand through that? What do you need to start scheduling some days off, my friend? The other thing that I didn't even mention about my dad's work that you made me realize was my dad worked the same job before I was born. And up until last year, he got perfect attendance for like 20 years straight. Perfect attendance incentives are really, really difficult. We think they make sense. We think that they're going to help us. We think that it's incentive. But what it does is cause people to feel bad for calling out and taking those sick days and taking those mental health days and taking those pauses. He was very proud of how he hasn't had to take sick days and how he hasn't had to take call out. But after 20 years of doing that, he got cancer. I'm not going to say they're linked, but I'm also going to say that when they caught it, it was significantly worse than had he taken a day off 6 months earlier than when it got diagnosed and got his nose checked out. But he didn't. He just kept working. Anxious and defeated. The talk went okay, but they won't decide what treatment I'll get. The result for that will be somewhere in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Well, welcome in, Asta, and thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry to hear that they aren't giving you the exact answer that you were hoping to hear right now, Asta, but keep us updated, friend. Proud of you for going to the talk, though. Sometimes a bit of time is what you need. People don't slow down, right? I worked 8 hours a week for 5 weeks, and they found it strange that I had a mental breakdown. But what it is literally just overwork, you know? Okay, look, I'm back again, and the boy is awake, still trying to cool off. Oop, Money's reminder to do the self-care. Here you go, Mugus. I'll do some more reading, and you guys can look at Money. Okay, so this was an interesting part. Technology has normalized operating at a breakneck pace. Studies show we check our emails an average of 74 times a day and switch tasks every 3 minutes. Our always-on habits mean our minds are never quiet, and we feel frantic when we try to disconnect. So we keep moving at a speed that prevents reflection and rest. When we ricochet from one thing to the next, we accumulate stress in our bodies. In their book Burnout, doctors Emily and Amelia Nagoski write that when our ancestors were faced with a predator, they would either work with others to slay the beast or flee, the flight or fight response. Doing so required them to draw on what's called surge capacity, the set of adaptive systems, a rush of adrenaline, a pounding heartbeat, humans rely on to react to an emergency. So, when our ancestors were faced with a predator, they would either work to slay the beast or flee, fight or flight. Doing fight or flight draws on surge capacity. Surge capacity is the set of adaptive systems that humans rely on to respond in an emergency, aka a rush of adrenaline and a pounding heartbeat. I wanted to re-say that so that made sense. But surge capacity only lasts so long, and our ancestors only used it in short bursts to escape death. When they successfully survived, they felt exhilarated and could then relax again, and so the stress cycle would be completed. So it made sense for our ancestors, you know? Oh, Money says faceplant. I even knew the consequences of allowing myself to get burned out and turning to caffeine because I saw the doctors, residents, and students I worked with do the exact same thing with the same result. And that's one of the things too, Queen of Fur. Like, it's terrifying how we see the way it can destroy us and we still can't help ourselves. Or feel like we can't help ourselves, maybe. Friend answers me after 10 hours for something that takes him 10 seconds to answer. I just want to leave this place and people. How can we support you, Mr. Krabs? I mean, I take a long time to respond to things too. But I don't want to dismiss what you're experiencing too. Poor money. Okay, so in the modern world, we operate on surge capacity all the time because we never complete the stress cycle. If you're stuck in traffic for hours, you won't immediately feel better as you walk through your front door. Your body will still be in the middle of a stress response. And if you haven't made it a habit to go for a walk or wind down, you will continue to produce the stress hormone cortisol for the rest of the evening. Eventually, all that accumulated stress will catch up to you and you'll crash. Myth number 3, everyone's burnout is the same. Burnout has become an umbrella term, and so this is where I wanted to grab my book because Rothgar shared a different version of burnout than Morgana did. Burnout has become an umbrella term. When the authors spoke with different readers, they used the word burnout to mean they were tired, bored, fed up with managers, overwhelmed by personal responsibilities, depressed, working too many hours. The list went on and on. In other words, there's many shades of burnout. It's useful to understand exactly what you're feeling. It's useful to understand exactly what you're feeling so you can get the specific support that will be most helpful. If you feel fried because you're pulling long hours, that has different implications than if you work from 9 to 5 but are depressed because you find your role meaningless. Okay? I don't know who's still listening, but I'm going to read that again. If you feel fried because you're pulling long hours, that has different implications than if you work from 9 to 5 but are depressed because you find your role meaningless. Because if, like we talked about earlier, if you're doing something that you don't like, that also accumulates. It's cats! They're big fluffy chunks. They have the beans. They have the beans. If you don't let it catch up, you can't crash. I mean, I guess, Venom. So in this book, they include a burnout assessment that I can find for you guys and maybe post in Discord later. But here's another image to look at. So you see we've got engaged, overextended, detached, ineffective, and then you're burned out. So like you're ineffective before you're burned out. You're detached before you burned out. You're overextended before you burn out. Okay. I'm going to try to finish this up because I know that when I read, it's a little bit harder for you guys to listen to me, especially without my closed captions that I need to fix. So there are a few suggestions on how to work through it. Overcoming burnout requires regular checkups. So number 1, what to do if you are overextended. Get comfortable living at 80%. Does anybody recognize that? Has anyone like heard of that before? Living at 80%? I do not work due to a disability, but I still get burnt out at times, if that makes sense. Absolutely, Mom Boss Lady, absolutely. Because you really anything can burn out. Or really anyone can get burnt out for random things. Okay, so you haven't heard of it, Caitlin? Okay, so get comfortable living at 80%. So, I'm trying to find the part to say. Okay. So, it talks about, so to study burnout, researcher Melissa Gregg interviewed exhausted knowledge workers at 4 organizations over the course of 3 years. To her surprise, all of them attributed their job-related fatigue to some sort of personal failure. No one thought they might just be overworked. If you feel constantly depleted, chances are your days are filled with back-to-back obligations and stressful deadlines. How much of it is self-inflicted? We've been there. We used to, and sometimes still do, to be honest, go above and beyond on everything, even when it wasn't necessary. During slow periods at work, Liz would assign herself a bunch of non-urgent, non-important tasks. When Mollie, an introvert who loves cozy nights in, saw an empty evening on her calendar, she would book another dinner or event. In both cases, they would have been better served by giving themselves a break. If everything is running smoothly, piling your plate with to-dos can work. But then you get sick, or you have to support a family member, or your boss quits, and suddenly you go from 100 to 120%, and your life melts into an unmanageable nightmare. So you're taking everything on, and you're at 100%, and then this thing happens. But you were already at 100%. So now you're going over that 100%. And so the idea of living in the 80%, it's like, there's a chapter in one of these other books that I really like called Good is Good Enough. It doesn't even have to be great. So to become more of a tortoise than a hare, we encourage you to get comfortable at living at 80%. Do not confuse this advice with the suggestion to work 80% time for 80% salary. This rarely works out, and you'll end up working full-time but getting paid for only 80% of your hours. It takes practice to slow down. Let's see. Ooh, this one's cool. This is a cool part. You may also find it helpful to place part of your life on the back burner at times. When Liz's dad was in the hospital, she cut back on social events for a while. When reader Paul was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, he tried to put off getting promoted for a bit while he worked on his health. This idea has come to be known as the 4 burners theory. So here again, another theory, the 4 burners theory. Has anyone heard of the 4 burners theory? This was new to me when I read the book. I need to take a picture of the page. So the 4 burners theory. A friend who was passing on the story from a seminar she attended told this person that your life has 4 burners: family, friends, health, and work. 4 burners: family, friends, health, and work. To be successful, you need to have one of these burners off at all times. And to be really successful, you have to shut off 2. Living at 80% will also give you natural breaks, during which you can complete that stress cycle. Pause, tune into your body. Your body tells you everything you need to know, but you have to learn to listen. That's what Beyonce said. There are 7 ways to listen to your body and break this stress cycle that we're talking about. Cry. Take slow, deep breaths. Do a physical activity. Laugh. Hang out with friends. Do something creative. Or engage in physical affection, like asking for a hug. The next thing is to learn to draw and respect your own lines. I would really like this book. Do you have a link for it? Of course I do. Of course I do, Caitlin. Isn't it fantastic? Isn't it heckin' fantastic? You're like, I need to share this with all my friends. Why don't the people who love me help me not overdo it? Well, it's because they want you to be successful. And a marker of success in our society is being busy. They might be just as busy as you are. People don't know what you want. It's your job to make it clear. Clarity saves relationships. It takes courage to say no and stick to it without feeling guilty. The next time you're on the brink of saying yes to something you're not excited about, pause and ask yourself, if I say yes, what do I gain? If I do this, what will I not be able to do instead? If I say no, what's the worst that could happen?